Let's have a seat, folks, so we can get started. I think some of our young classes are coming in too, and so good to see you this morning. Looking forward to this day as we look forward to every worship day. Today we have a very special occasion. Brother John Grubb is with us and his wife Etta, and I won't make much of a formal introduction right now. Will before his brings the lesson at worship today. And again, a number of you folks know John, and I know you're happy to see him and be with him. And he and I know a lot of people together, and just so proud of his good work there. John will be bringing this morning information about his mission work, and we look forward to that. And as I said, for worship today, I'll be introducing him, and we'll be more formal and bring more information for it. Again, John, welcome, and glad to have you.
I got it, but it's not moving. Where do I point? I know it's on, but I'm clicking and oh, there we go. See, now if you'd have had that on right there, it would have saved you a lot of time. It's good to be in Monroe. This is not the first time I've been in the building, but it's the first time I've spoken here. So I'm thankful to be here and to be part of the Bible class and worship. When I lived in Buford, I came over one time for a gospel meeting. I don't remember who was speaking at that particular time, but it's good to be here today, and we're going to give you a report of our recent mission trip in Asia. Now, some of you don't know me, so you can read the biographical sketch up on the wall that's up there right now. And we've been doing this for 44 years. And so I cannot give you a report of the last 44 years of the work that I've been doing. Okay, it's just not possible. So what I usually do is I give a report of the most recent missionary trip that I've made. And so in this report, you're getting an overview of the 85th mission trip that we've made in parts of Asia. And I'll talk a little bit about the background of the work that I do in regard to the Chinese language, because that is the primary focus of my work overseas, to preach and teach and to instruct in Mandarin Chinese. Of course, I do some English classes as well, but again, primarily emphasize the Chinese. Now, our work is overseen by the Church of Christ in Schertz, Texas. For 11 years, we were at Chestnut Mountain, and the church there oversaw our work. Before that, I was in Duluth for about 12 years, and they oversaw the work that they were doing, and so that we were doing. And so now we're in Schertz, which is outside of San Antonio. So if you're on the northeast side of San Antonio sometime, you're close enough, you can come by and visit. Now, I won't promise that we will be there because we may be overseas. This Friday, we're leaving for Indonesia. And so we'll be gone until the 8th of January. And during that time, we're going to be doing some traveling in Singapore and Singapore and Taiwan. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Here's a map of Southeast Asia, and some of you are familiar with I don't know which map to point to because you're all looking at different maps. If I point at this map, then you're going to be mad. And if I point at this map, then you're going to be mad. So I just won't point at a map. But you see at the top of the map, you see China. And then just off the coast of China is Taiwan. That's where I lived for 10 years, where I learned the Chinese language and worked there until 1992. Then coming back to the States, I worked 18 years with Truth for the World. And that was based in Duluth. And then continuing my Chinese work at Chestnut Mountain and now at Schertz. But these are some of the countries where we visit, primarily China, Taiwan, Singapore, Malaysia, and of course my wife, some of you have already met her, she's Indonesian, and so when we go overseas, we use her home as a base. So we'll go to Indonesia at the end of this week, and we'll be there until the end of November when we travel to Singapore and then straight on to Taiwan for a mission trip. Now, I like to show people the connection between the Chinese language and the Bible. One of the things that we have to do when we're talking to Chinese people is to show them that Chinese people have a connection to the Bible because they don't think they do. They think that their Chinese culture is completely different from anything the Bible would have to say. So we use this illustration, one of many that we're able to use. You see the top word there in the line is the Chinese word for boat. It's pronounced chuan, and the character chuan is made up of 3 separate characters, and you can see them in the top, but they're broken down for you underneath. The left part of the character means vessel. The top right part is the number 8, and the bottom right part is one of the words for people. And so the word for boat in 2025 in Chinese is a vessel made up of 8 people. Now, when you think about a vessel with 8 people, what do you think about? Yeah, the ark, the flood, Noah and the ark. 8 people in the ark. And so isn't it interesting that the word for boat in Chinese is made up of characters, which means a vessel with 8 people? Well, of course, I don't believe that's coincidence. I believe because the knowledge of God was in their minds. This is, of course, before the Tower of Babel. When the Chinese people would get their language, I believe Chinese is one of the languages that God brought about at the Tower of Babel, and all those people went east to where they live today. But this is helpful in trying to reach them with the gospel of Christ. Now, one of the things that I do when we're working in and among the Chinese is I do a lot of translation. And so I've got just a real simple example of that here. This is a couple of sentences from the book The Church of the Bible by J.C. Choate. And you see the top, chapter 1, Di Jiang, and then the meaning of the church, Jiao Hui de Yi. And then the first sentence says, no one will deny the Bible talks about a church, but whose church? 没有一个人会否认圣经所讲述的一个教会所指的是谁的教会? Then the bottom sentence, which church, what kind of church? 哪一个教会? 怎么样的教会? So those are the translations of those sentences, and we have books, we have tracts, we have booklets, we have a number of materials that I have translated, as well as some of our brethren now in China and in Singapore and in Malaysia. And these are Chinese people, so they're really the ones that need to be doing it, because in case you didn't notice, I'm not Chinese. But I try to do the best I can with the abilities that I have, but it's much better for the Chinese people to do it. They're going to do a better job at it. For about 12 years, I've made videos, Chinese videos, at World Video Bible School in Maxwell, Texas. I actually made 185 Chinese videos that are available on their website or are available from them. And the reason I did that was because nobody else was doing it. None of our Chinese brethren were doing it. Now, we have some Chinese brethren that are doing that, so I'm not spending as much time in videotaping in Chinese because we have Chinese brethren that can do that. Now, I just showed you an example. Let me back you up. I know you can't really tell the difference unless you're able to read Chinese, but the characters on this screen are what are called traditional characters. These are the characters that have been developed through the centuries that were used up until 1949 by all Chinese-speaking people. But then in 1949, when the communist government came into existence, October 1st, 1949, they switched to what is called a simplified Chinese character. You might want to turn me down just a little bit back there. I'm ringing. At least I'm ringing. I don't know if you hear it or not. In these characters, these are what are called simplified characters, which means they're easier to write. The problem is that I learned the traditional, and so those are the characters that I can read the most comfortably. But over the last 10 or 12 years, I've been learning the simplified because a lot of the teaching that I do in Singapore, Malaysia, and China, we use the simplified characters. So I have a computer where I do my work in the traditional characters, then I can click a button and it changes it all over to simplified. And I'm glad. 1982, when we went to Taiwan, I didn't even know what a computer was. I mean, I know what a computer was, but back in the 70s, I remember I worked for Columbia Records in Terre Haute, that's my hometown, and they had a room that was specially air conditioned, and it was a room about, 12 by 15, and that was the computer. That was the computer that they had to keep operating. Well, we know that a lot of things have happened since that particular time. So now that we have computers in our pocket, and we're able to use it in so many useful ways. I have probably the oldest phone in this building. This is a Samsung S8 Plus, and you got to really dig deep to find somebody with an S8 Plus. But even this phone does more than I know how to do in its operation. And so we're able today to be able to use the computer and make these materials available more quickly. Now, one of the things that I want to emphasize to you today as part of my work, and that is the importance of learning the Chinese language. How many of you have gone overseas and spoke through a translator? Anybody? Okay, got a few people that have spoken through a translator. There are some limitations to that. When you speak through a translator, whether it's Chinese or Spanish or French or German, whatever language you're talking about, there are limitations with your translators. And in order to have a proper translation, there must be three things present. Number one, the person who's translating for you must know your language. Number two, they have to know the language into which they're translating. And then when we're talking about preaching and teaching, number three, they have to know the Bible. And if they don't know the Bible, then they're not going to translate certain sentences or phrases correctly. And so there are limitations in using a translator. Now, I've translated for other people, and I asked them very kindly, please do not use idioms, because idioms are hard to translate. If I hear them use an idiom in English, like a man that was so rich he had money running out of his ears, I just translate the meaning of that idiom because I don't know the equivalent idiom in Chinese. The same is true in the reverse. Chinese has a lot of idioms. For example, they have an idiom pronounced luo tang ji. Now, let me just translate literally what that means. Luo tang ji means the chicken fell in the soup. Okay, everybody understand what I'm talking about? We could have used it today. You know why? Because it's raining outside. And when you get caught in a thunderstorm, it's like a chicken that fell in the soup. And so today they'd say, oh, Luo Tangji, because it's raining hard, you know. And so those are idioms that they use. And so we have idioms, they have idioms. If you go overseas and do preaching, try to avoid using idioms because they're very difficult to translate. Of course, some of the positive aspects of speaking the language is you don't have to go through a translator. You're able to speak directly to the people. When you're translating through a translator, your lesson has to be either half what it would normally be, or you've got to use twice the amount of time to get all the lesson in, because you speak it and then they speak it. And so it's valuable to be able to speak the language. And so what we did in 1982, beginning in January of 83, we started going to language school. And I went to a language school that had tutored classes. So I was the only student in the class, 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, in the classroom. If the teacher asked a question, I couldn't look around to see who was going to answer it. I was the only one in there. So I would have to answer the question. And then back home, 6 hours a day, 6 days a week, preparing for the next day's class. And so in about a year and 10 months, I was able to speak, to understand, to read, to write, and to preach even in Chinese, which we began doing in November of 1984. And so those are some things that are necessary to learn the language so that you can speak directly to the people. Now, it's helpful also to learn the language on site. What I mean by that, we have a lot of apps today that are on your phone where you can learn a language. But, you know, even though they're good, and there are a lot of good ones, it's better if you can be over in the country you're trying to learn the language in, so that you can both hear as well as to speak in that language. And so the fact that we were in Taichung, Taiwan, 99% of the people that lived in that city did not speak English. So when we walked out our door, we had to practice speaking Chinese, and that was a great asset to us. And of course, I've already mentioned the time and the dedication that's involved in learning the language. Now I want to talk today, this morning, in the time that we have, the work that we're doing in Singapore, in Malaysia, in China, and Taiwan. Since COVID, I've been able to teach through Zoom and other platforms, places in Taiwan, in China, Singapore, and Malaysia. I speak once in a while in Melbourne, Australia, through Google Meet. And so these are different areas where I've been able to speak. And so because of that, we were able to set up a Chinese school in Singapore. We already had an English school there called Four Seas College of Bible and Missions. But actually the elders at Jurong in Singapore decided that they wanted to start a Chinese section of the school. So we have 7 teachers, 6 Chinese, and me teaching in the school. But we do that online. We have 8 mainland Chinese students living in Singapore studying in the school. We have 9 students, Chinese students, online from mainland China studying in the school as well. We have 17 full-time students, as well as those who log on who are not taking courses for credit. And so I have the privilege to teach in that class. So whether I'm in Indonesia, like I'll be after next week, or if I'm in America, wherever I am, I'm able to teach via the internet. Now right now I'm teaching at Four Seas College Chinese Department on Exodus and Leviticus. I started that on the 6th of October and will continue through December 3rd. We're actually going to be in Singapore the last week in November. So for the first time, I'm going to teach that class in person, in the classroom, because normally we do it through the internet. And so I do that. I've taught 2 quarters in a row. I'll get a break next quarter. But we do that to train the Chinese workers that once they graduate, go back to mainland China and work among their own people. Now, May 30th through June 12th, we went to Malaysia, and while we were there, we participated in the Chinese Asian Bible Lectureship. This is a lectureship that we hold every year in Malaysia. Brethren come from China, from Singapore, from Malaysia, from Taiwan, from the Philippines, and from America to take part or to participate in this lectureship. Now, before I get to that, every Sunday I participate in the worship service in the church in Taiwan, the Taichung Church of Christ in Taiwan. And you see these individuals, many of us are online, but the two top squares on the left, those are those who are actually in the church building in Taiwan. And in December, Etta and I will be going to Taiwan. I'll be participating in the lectureship as I've done for a number of years. And one difference this year is one of our elders, Stan Stockton, is going with us. He's going to actually meet us there in Taiwan because we're coming straight from Singapore. And Brother Stockton will preach on the lectureship, and I'll do the translating for him. And so that's something that will be a little bit different this year at the lectureship. So you can see some of the people, I know not very clearly, but it gives you an idea of some of the numbers that attend the worship service there in one of the congregations in Taiwan. We have congregations in Taipei, Taichung, Hualien, and in Kaohsiung. This is a country of 23 million people, and yet we probably have less than 100 faithful members on the island. So there's a lot of work to do in Taiwan. We also have an aging staff of workers as far as preachers go. We've got 3 full-time workers, and all of them are above the age of 60. Now, hopefully I'm not offending anybody by mentioning above the age of 60. But we've got one who's 72, one who is 62, and then we've got a part-time preacher. He's close to 80. So we're in need of younger workers there. I'm trying to encourage some of our graduates from Four Seas College Chinese Department to make a commitment to go to Taiwan. Now, I know there are 1.3 or 4 billion people in mainland China, and that's certainly a need that needs to be fulfilled, but we do not want to overlook the millions of people that live in Taiwan, and so we hope that we can encourage people in that way. Now, what I do when I preach in Taiwan, I sent my slides to Brother Yo, and he has to manipulate the slides because it's not Zoom, it's called Line, L-I-N-E, and you can't control it from your computer. So he controls the slides, and then you can see I'm on a couple of screens there for people to see while I'm speaking. One thing I try to do in all of my lessons when I'm overseas is I have the material I'm using on the screen both in English and Chinese. And I do that for 2 reasons. Number one, sometimes I might want to refresh my memory on what I'm talking about. I can look at the English real quick and then translate it into Chinese. Also, there are, especially in Singapore and Malaysia, there are a number of Chinese people there who speak Chinese, but they are English educated. What that means is they cannot read and write in the Chinese language. So I put the English up for them. They can understand it by hearing it, but they can also see the English and benefit from that. Now I'm showing you 2 pictures of food in this slide. I used to do a lot of pictures of food, but when I do that, everybody gets hungry and they're ready for lunch. So I don't do that much anymore. And if you want to see pictures, scenery pictures of Singapore and Malaysia and Taiwan and China and Indonesia, go to Google Images and just pull those places up because, they got a lot better pictures on there than what I'd ever be able to show you. But this is my favorite food in Malaysia. It's a very simple food. It costs about 75 cents to eat. And it is in Malaysian or in Indonesian, it's called roti telur bawang. Roti is the word for bread. Some of you may recognize that word. It's an Indian word. Telur is the word for egg. And bawang is the word for onion. So what they do is they put that all together and cook it on a griddle, and that's how it comes out. And then they have either curry sauce or they have Indian dal that they give you to put on it. And so when I go to Malaysia, which won't be until next May, this is one dish that I definitely eat. Now, my second favorite food's on the right in this picture, and it's sauté. Sauté is meat on a stick, in case you can't tell what that is. And it's cooked over charcoal, and they give you some rice squares and some cucumbers and onions. My wife on this day was eating curry mee, which is a kind of noodles that you can eat overseas. And also you can see in her picture, she's got her curry sauce because my wife loves spicy food. Okay, there's two words in Indonesian. One is panas, that means hot. And another word is pedas, and that means spicy hot. So panas is about the weather or something else, but pedas is spicy food. Of course, we have words for that in Chinese as well. Now let's go back to Malaysia. This is our annual lectureship, Chinese lectureship, that we have in the first weekend in June every year in Malaysia. And this, I believe, was the 17th annual lectureship where we had 12 to 14 speakers from Singapore, from Malaysia, from China, and one from the U.S. who spoke on the topic of recognizing God. And so that was the theme for the lectureship. And we meet in a place where they have a huge hall. There were 3 screens on the wall behind the speakers, one on each side and one in the middle, and huge screens. You can see anything that's written on there from a long distance. And we had approximately 180 Chinese-speaking people in the lectureship this year. That's becoming an average. Of course, we'd like to get it up to 200, but we have that many that come and spend 3 days in the lectureship. We also are able to eat together in this particular place. So we have a place here where we sit around the tables, not only for breakfast and lunch, but also for 2 dinners. And so that is also a wonderful opportunity of fellowship. Here's a picture of Brother John Yo, and the only reason I know that's John Yo is because I've shown these slides before. I can't see him from here. But anyway, that's who that is. And he's speaking on one of the topics. That's me speaking. Usually they put me on first on the lectureship, get that American out of the way so we can hear the Chinese people speak. Anyway, I always get to speak the first thing, and I had the keynote lesson talking about the theme of the lesson this year. Now, when we're at the lectureship every year, we have our Four Seas College Chinese Department graduation. This year, we only had 2 to graduate. Last year, we had 6 that graduated from the school. Next year, we'll have 8 who will graduate from Four Seas College Chinese Department. And some of those who have graduated have gone back to China. They've received support from churches in Singapore and Malaysia. All of the workers in China are being supported by Asian brethren. They're not receiving support from Americans. They're receiving it from congregations in Singapore or Malaysia. And so we're thankful for the opportunity that we're able to do through that school. Here are the speakers for the lectureship, and I know most of you don't know the people that are there. We have 2 there from mainland China, 3 or 4 from Malaysia. We have a couple from Singapore, a couple from Taiwan, and then I'm also there in the list. Here's a picture of the approximate crowd that we had. Not everybody was able to be in this picture, but the organizers told me that we had somewhere around 180 people to attend the lectureship. You can see the size of the hall and the screens there behind them. Okay, while we were in Malaysia, we also visit some of the local congregations. Now, since I started going to Malaysia regularly in 1999, there have been a number of new congregations that have been established. For example, the Kota Kamuning congregation was established. It's an English-speaking congregation in the Kuala Lumpur area, and it's about 8 years old. They've already got elders and deacons in the congregation. So that's a wonderful addition. We have congregations in Singapore that have elders as well, elders and deacons. And there are other congregations that are contemplating. We have the church in Klang, which is also in the Kuala Lumpur area in Malaysia, have elders. And so we're thankful that it took about 60 years before we finally had elders in Singapore and Malaysia. But we finally accomplished that through the local brethren and through their development as Christians. But one of the places that we went was the Section 17 congregation, and you can see the church building on the left, and then on the right is the auditorium. The English meet during the morning and the Chinese meet at night. Now, when I'm not in Malaysia, I meet with this Chinese congregation online. If I'm in the United States, it's 5 o'clock in the morning. If I meet in Indonesia, it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So which one do you think I prefer? Yeah, that's right, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. That's the one I prefer. The time's getting ready to change, right? A couple weeks. It'll be 4 o'clock in the morning in the States instead of 5 o'clock in the morning. I really don't like that kind of time. Anyway, I work with them, and once a month, I speak online to this congregation. Here's some slides they put up when I'm there to speak. Here's one of the topics that I was speaking on, the true worship, that they put my picture and they put the title on there. And you can see on the right those who are on Zoom that are participating in the worship as well. Here's a number of those who attended the night that Etta and I were there when I spoke in person to the congregation. Now, another congregation, this is one of many in the Kuala Lumpur area, is the Subang Jaya congregation. Now, this congregation has been around a long time. I spoke there in 1999, and I still have the opportunity when I go to speak there. In fact, they told me, anytime you come to Malaysia, we want you to come and speak. So I speak to the English group, and then I speak to the Chinese group. Chinese meets in the afternoon. These are some of the men in the Chinese congregation, some of those who attend the Chinese congregation at Subang Jaya. Here are some of the men, the leadership. They don't have elders, but they have those who take a part in the leadership of the Subang Jaya congregation. And through this congregation, I'll talk about it in a minute, about 5 years ago, they set up a Wednesday night Bible class online, and they called it In Devo. And here's an example of where I spoke. I speak once a month on this program. It meets from 7 o'clock in the evening until 8:45 in the evening. Times are different depending on where I am. And what we do in this class is we have 2 songs and a prayer, then we have a lesson. And we have different speakers that speak every week. Again, I speak once a month on this program. Then at the end of the program, we have an invitation song, announcements that are made for the local congregation. And then for whatever time's remaining, we have a Q&A. We have questions and answers. And so those who have attended the class can now ask questions and make comments about the things that we've talked about. I talked this time on the parable of the tares, later on the parable of the mustard seed. The last time I spoke early this month, I spoke on the beauty of heaven. Next month, I'm speaking on the reality of hell. And every speaker has a choice as to what they want to talk about. I've taught lessons on evolution, on premillennialism, all kinds of different lessons that I'm able to present. All of these being in English on Wednesday night their time. Now, as I mentioned, my wife is Indonesian, and when we go back overseas, we go to Indonesia. Well, a couple of years ago, maybe less than 2 years ago, I lost my annual visa. I used to renew it once a year while I was there. Well, they changed some of the time format and regulations, and I wasn't able to get it, and so I had to get a 30-day visa on arrival. Well, what happens in a 30-day visa on arrival, if you're going to be there longer than 30 days, before 30 days is up, you got to get out. So we would go to Singapore or Malaysia, somewhere like that, and spend a day, and then come back to Indonesia, and I get another 30 days. So this last time when we were in Indonesia, my wife found out as soon as we leave the country, she can apply for a 2-year visa for me, not a 30-day visa on arrival. So she worked on that hard. This chart here says $1 million rupiah penalty a day for overstaying. Well, don't get too nervous. That's $70 US. But still, that's every day that you overstay, it's $70 US. And if you overstay your visa, probably you're going to have difficulty getting back into the country. So we didn't want to do that. So we were able to get the 2-year visa, and here it is right here. I took a picture of it for you. And so now when I go through immigration in Indonesia, I just show them my visa, and it won't be a problem. They won't ask me where I'm going or what I'm doing because it's all in the computer for the visa, and I don't have to go in and out every 30 days. We can stay there until we're ready to go and make another trip. Now, my wife is on a tourist visa here in the States. It took us 5 tries to get her a tourist visa. I don't know, she finally did get to go to Chestnut Mountain, didn't she? Yeah, but it took a while. And people kept waiting. When's your wife coming to the States? When's your wife coming to the States? And then COVID separated us for 13 months. I was leaving Indonesia. I said, I'll see you in 3 weeks. Well, 13 months later, I was able to see her again because of COVID. And they had these quarantine periods over there. The first time I went back, finally, after 13 months, I had to stay in a hotel by myself and couldn't leave the room for 18 days. And they delivered the food to my door. I'd take it in and eat it, put the dirty dishes outside. I did that for 18 days, couldn't leave the room for 18 days. Now, it's not so bad for one person. There was a family of 5 down the hallway from me. Husband and wife and 3 kids. Can you imagine having that kind of a situation in a hotel room for 18 days? Anyway, they slowly shortened it through the time where finally, I think it was 3 or 5 days of quarantine, and of course now we're thankful that none of that is happening. But these are things you have to deal with when you go to foreign countries. When I go to Singapore, I get 90 days, visa on arrival. Malaysia, 90 days, visa on arrival. Taiwan, 30 days, visa on arrival. So I don't have to worry about going to those places. The special situation is in Indonesia because of the fact that we stay there for an extended time. This is my wife in the airport there in Lampung, where we live in Indonesia. And how can you help? Well, you can pray. You can pray for our work. The effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man avails much, James 5:16. We have brethren in this congregation. First of all, the Monroe Church sends us $200 a month for the work that we're doing. We have other members in this congregation who send us monthly contributions. I won't mention that it's the Harpers, but anyway, they're a family that supports our work. And then we have brethren from all over the country who will make one-time contributions. Recently, we received a current contribution from one of our members at Shirts for $4,000. Well, that really helps when you're paying these outrageous prices for airline tickets overseas. And then, of course, telling others about our work is always helpful. Here's some useful websites for you. TheShirtsChurch.com is our church website in Shirts, Texas. Some of you may remember that the Denton Shirts lectureship was conducted for a number of years, and they produced lectureships on all 66 books of the Bible before they completed those lectureships. And you can get a hold of Shirts and ask them for a thumb drive PDF of all of those books that are available to you. So you might want to do that if you want to. World Video Bible School, I mentioned that already, where we film our lessons. Gospel Broadcasting TV.org. I've appeared on that TV station because I've done videos at WVBS that they've used on the TV there in English, not in Chinese. And then IBT Ministries. Some of you may remember Jimmy and Linda Hill. They were involved in this work along with Ron Gilbert. I don't know if some of you know that last couple of weeks Linda Hill passed away. Jimmy passed away a number of years ago, but Linda just recently passed away, and she worked with this particular work even after Jimmy passed away. But they have a lot of Bible correspondence courses on that site, and so you can access that through that website. And of course, they do a lot of work in Africa specifically. And then, of course, oabs.org, Online Academy of Bible Studies. They have an online school. You can actually go to school through them, get the material online, and it's graded for you. They also archive. They do a lot of live broadcasts on Sunday and lectureships as well, and then they archive it. So you can go to that site and find a lot of material that might be useful to you. Down at the bottom, you see the Grubb mission reports, and I got to go out in the car and get the Grubb mission reports. They're out in the car for the paper copy. Of course, the paper copy comes here every month, and maybe it's posted on the bulletin board somewhere. But I have some extra copies. But if you don't have a hard copy of it, look at the bottom, grubbmissionwork.blogspot.com. You can go to that site anytime and read all of my reports back to 2011, because that's when I started doing that blog spot. Every month you can read the reports there. I started doing reports in July of 1982. That's when I started doing reports. But back then I didn't have a computer, so I wasn't able to put them online. But anyway, the ones from 2011 you can access at that point. Of course, all of our contributions go to the elders at the Church of Christ in Schertz, Texas. Now, what time do we stop? Don't tell me 10 after. Okay, so we got a couple of minutes. What questions do you have? Oh, come on. Something has come to your mind through all of that. Anybody?
I have something.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any trouble with the governments of these countries?
Ah,
Can you tell them why you're really going?
Great question. Great question. Freedom of worship is true in Taiwan, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia even as well. But like in places like Indonesia, you can't have a church building with a sign. You know, it's the largest Muslim country in the world. Indonesia is 294 million population. The majority are Muslim. In mainland China, this is the biggest problem, because even though you may read about the fact that China's opened up to the gospel, the fact is it's not opened up to the gospel, it's opened up to denominationalism. And so if you're part of a denomination, you're willing to go in and compromise your teaching, your doctrine, and your faith, you can go into China openly and participate in worship services. But if you're going to worship according to the New Testament pattern, you cannot do that. So I used to go to China all the time, and of course I went in on a tourist visa. I did not tell them I was coming in to do teaching and preaching in Chinese, because if I had done that, they would not have let me in. And so I would tell the brethren when I get to China, now don't forget, I'm here on a tourist visa, so I got to do some touring while I'm here, because I got to fulfill my visa. But I had opportunities to teach in worship, in Bible classes, and private Bible classes, as well as a small group. We would usually meet for worship somewhere in a number of 20, and we would meet in an apartment. For private Bible study, sometimes we'd go to Starbucks. And in Starbucks, some of them are pretty good size over there in China. I was in Shanghai. We'd go back in the corner where they had a couch, and we'd all pull out our phones. Well, you know, in China, everybody's looking at their phones. But we had our Bibles on our phones. So we were able to have a Bible study by using our phones. But no, we don't tell them why we're coming, because if they did, they wouldn't let us in. Also, right now, I had a 10-year visa in China prior to this time, but COVID, they canceled all those visas. And so I don't think I could get a visa now. And so for now, we're allowing brethren from Singapore and Malaysia to go into mainland China, because they are ethnic Chinese. And they look like the other people that are in the country. I don't look Chinese. And so when I go into China, I'm very visible, because I don't look Chinese, and I'm very visible because I speak Chinese, which is, you know, unusual for a person like me to go in and speak among the Chinese people. So that's a great question. Appreciate that. One more quick question, because we're out of time.
How many congregations are in China?
Well, of course, we don't know the answer to that question, because we don't have any way of keeping track of who is where doing what. You know, if we did any kind of reporting as to the number of congregations in a city, or, you know, a congregation in whatever particular city, then it might filter back to the government, and then those people would be in trouble. The ones that we do know exist are the ones where we actually have personal contact, or the Chinese brethren who are actually in China are aware of congregations that are meeting in a certain place, and they can tell us that. But we don't know the number, but I'd say in China, you could say we have maybe a few hundred New Testament Christians in all of the country. But we do have 3 or 4 or 5 full-time Chinese preachers in China working in the various congregations there. Okay, we're out of time. I've kept you extra 2 or 3 minutes. Thank you for your attention, and I hope that you have benefited from the presentation this morning. Thank you very much.
You didn't know Alan Adams, did
Oh, of course I did.